also I feel like you're very in demand because there's not that many great guys.
But that's my point. Like, I think there are great.
Like, we think you're getting more attention than you should get.
So good to be back here with you, Jordana, for a Friday Feels episode. We're feeling extra special today because we are joined by a You Up favorite and the now dating coach on the Later Daters, which you can watch on Netflix right now. Logan Ury, thank you for coming on.
Yay, thanks for having me.
Great to have you in person.
I know, I feel like this is like years in the making.
I think we've been on You've been on like a couple times before, but there was always virtual. So this is like really exciting to have you in person.
Yeah, I've met Jared before in person, but this is our first time meeting. Wow. Yeah, and I feel like we met virtually like 4 years ago, like doing some like dating in the pandemic thing.
I remember it. It was like, I remember like being in my 1-bedroom apartment and like, it's kind of like awkward setup of just trying to figure out how to do those virtual like panel things.
Yeah, I remember being
dating.
like, oh, she has a good mic. Like, I got to get a good mic.
Gotta up my game.
Yeah.
Well, we're so pumped to have you. Congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be a part of a TV show, to be a part of a dating show? What kind of like what is it? And everyone needs to go watch Later Daters. You're gonna love it.
It's so good.
Way more relatable. I think like the Golden Bachelor kind of opened the door for something like this. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah. So the quick spiel for people who haven't heard of it is that it's daters over 55 looking for love. Mm-hmm. And so I'm their coach. I'm on screen and I'm helping them. So things like, what's your relationship history? What are you looking for? Why love now? And then we set them up on a series of blind dates. So you get to know them as people in the context of their families. You get to see them in the coaching sessions. And then you see them on some very good and very bad dates.
Right.
It is, I think, it's funny because like when I started talking about dating on podcasts, like way back when, you know, why would you talk about dating? I'm like, well, I'm going through it and it's a world that's very different than our parents lived in.
Yeah.
So like the idea of dating apps and Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook and who's messaging who and all this like unsaid stuff, like that's kind of the world they're getting dropped into.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a woman on there who's a widow. She hasn't dated in 30 years. She's using an outdated playbook where she's like, I can't respond to his message. I can't ask him out. I have to be coy. I'm just like, the world isn't what it was the last time that you dated.
Right.
And so she really needs to update how she's dating.
Yeah. And I think there's like a specific subset of people who like haven't been in the scene. Right.
Right.
So it's really, and it's probably like very daunting. Like that's probably the scariest thing. I'm sure you felt that when speaking to all these people is like, okay, like what do I like? What's step one? Or
yeah,
like, probably. And also something I hear anecdotally from older daters is like this fear of like the internet and like being taken advantage of. I hear this a lot from like older women who are like divorced women who are dating, or it's like there's this fear of like men are gonna like use me for my money or like scam me, or maybe they saw like Dirty John and they're like,
oh, that's funny.
Do you know what I mean?
There's
Do you
this
get
quote,
that?
I don't know if you've heard it before. It's, I don't want to be a nurse or a purse. And it's what older women
like that.
It's what older women say. I heard it when I was prepping for the show and on the show, which obviously means like I'm not trying to marry someone and then within like 5 years just take care of a person that's you know dying, and I'm also not trying to financially support someone.
Right.
And so I feel like there are a lot of fears that hold people back from putting themselves out there, or where they enter the conversation feeling like, oh, someone's going to take advantage of me.
Right.
But one thing I would say is that I actually felt like coaching them wasn't that different from the people I typically coach. Like before I did the show, you know, all my research, all my coaching was with Gen Z and millennials. And then before the show, I did a bunch of research into what this older group is like. So for example, since 1990, the number of people over 50 who get divorced has doubled. So there's way more gray divorce. There's a much bigger part of this age group that's looking for love. But then in the conversations, I was like, this is the same shit that I say to people who are 35. It's like the universal things of be vulnerable, open up, have fun on the date, flirt, figure out what you want. It's like we actually all need the same coaching.
We just had this conversation on the January 1st episode. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen. Just about, we had an emailer write in about like, I'm 45. How do I date at this age? And I was like, from my perspective, like, I'm like, you've just aged yourself. Like your issues are not specific to 45 versus 55 versus 65 versus 35 and 25. These are all like, it's the same. And you see it, I noticed it while, you know, visiting my parents in Florida and going to Boca and being around these
Boca.
people in Boca. You're a Boca native yourself.
Boca babe.
A Boca babe here with us today, live in person. You know, but you hear these people, he won't text me. You know, like they just want to have sex. And you're like, whoa, easy there, Ellen. You know, like.
I think a lot of the stuff is the same, and it's this universal desire to love and be loved, a universal fear of being rejected. There are some things that are different. And so it's interesting that in your example you used 45, because I do feel like for women who want to have a biological kid of their own, there is a lot of stuff that comes up around like late 30s to mid 40s where it's like, my time is running out. And like, I would say like, that's where a lot of my friends are right now. And like a lot of them are choosing to be like single moms by choice. And so I think that in that exact age group, there is a pretty age specific thing going on around fertility.
Well, I think
that's what I was saying.
You were saying the same.
I was like, because you were saying, because the woman wrote in basically for our last email and she was like, I'm in my mid 40s. Like, how do I like what should my expected timeline be for all these things? And he was like, well, your timeline at 43 should be the same as your timeline at 23, like in terms of your head. And I was like, well, not really.
I guess my point was more that like, you know, the game stays the same. The players might be changing, but the game stays the same. Like, I don't think you're dealing with a guy on the other side. The guy who confuses you at 35 when your clock is ticking is the same, doing the same tricks and moves as the guy at 25 is doing.
But I think your response can be different. Like, there's people that I dated in my 20s that I knew I wasn't going to marry. Like, my mom loves to tell the story about like some guy that I brought home and she has these like cheesy Thanksgiving place cards. And she was like, I wrote his name in pencil. I knew he wasn't here to stay. And it's like, she's right. He wasn't here to stay.
Right.
And so at 25, that was fine. Like, I could have fun for a year. But like, that person at 35 or 45, I'd be like, don't even date that person. Right. So I do feel like it changes. And it's what, like, kind of the point I was building to is that when you're older, like, there isn't the pressure of fertility. So it's like, I think that it's like your 20s, you can like have fun and be a little bit more experimental. Then I do think like 30s and 40s for women do have this unique feeling of like a deadline. But then these older daters, in some ways, were more free because there's no pressure for fertility. There isn't necessarily pressure to get married. You can have all these different living arrangements. You can move in together. You can do LAT, living apart together. Let's say you want to marry someone of the same religion.
What's
like,
LAT?
Like living apart together.
Oh.
It's just like some term that means like a lot of older people are like, I don't want to combine my households. I don't want to get married. I don't want to have like financial entanglements. I just want to be with you in this committed way.
Well, Jared, maybe you need to date.
I need a purse, but I don't want to have to be a nurse. You know, the thing that's come out of your show since it's come out, because we're late to the game here, so we want people to go watch it immediately. Go watch. The thing that came out of your show, the response is sometimes as interesting as the show.
For sure.
You have had some TikToks get pretty viral, and it's a lot of TikToks that I'm seeing, and here's my taste of it. I'll give you my taste, and we have one that's an example. But it is the women, we are like, look at this queen. Yes, get it, go. You go, girl, kill it. And then it's these men who are like, and the response from TikTok is like, the men just keep being the men. These assholes, these pieces of shit. And I'm like, it's funny that you're like, you get to date with more freedom and you're later in life. And it's like, these guys are just doing the same thing they've always done. And they're still pissing people off, which is like, so interesting to me. It's like, it's really a no-win.
I mean, no one is more set in their ways than like an older single man. I say that because my dad has been divorced 30 years, probably close to that. And like, he lives like no one would ever live like that. But I think it's...
Someone should take it is what he's saying.
What?
Take it or leave it.
Yeah, I just think there's like maybe like, maybe women are like that too, but they just have their shit together. I don't know. What have you seen through doing this?
Have you seen that response too?
I haven't seen that response, but it makes sense to me. There's a couple other responses that we can talk through as well. I feel like the women on the show were really good students. Like when they're taking notes in our sessions, they're actually taking notes. Like Anise, who was someone who I had a special relationship with, she was really sitting there like, this is an opportunity that I get to be coached. And she's taking all these notes.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but to that point, I mean, our listenership is mostly women.
Yeah.
Like women do have an interest in betterment and in the dating space from a young age.
I mean, this is just like, this isn't something that I've thought through the most, but I've been doing a lot of 2025 planning. And I keep thinking like, what is the most impactful thing that I could do next year to help with dating? Like what's really the area of focus? And the thing that keeps coming to mind for me is like improving the population of male daters.
Okay.
Because I'm like,
but do they want to learn? This is our problem with finding men who listen to this show.
I'm like, a lot of my clients are male and like I love working with them, but I'll tell them things that I think are fairly obvious and they're like, oh my God.
Like what?
Life changing.
Yeah.
Like things around like one guy in particular, like he's really confident and he has a lot of reasons to be confident. But when he starts liking a girl, he sort of forgets all the reasons why he's great and he comes on a little too strong. And I think it turns people off. And so it's just like thinking through like how to be himself even when he likes someone, not how to.
So let me go to Plug City for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Because if you're listening right now, Logan was going to do a coaching session with me. Yeah. So you're gonna hear maybe
we haven't done it yet.
We haven't done it yet. Yeah. We're about to tape it, but it's You Up with Benefits. You have to sign up for benefits. It'll be the next episode that comes out.
I think it's out Monday.
It's out this Monday, so this will come out Friday. And on Monday, you can hear me get a coaching session from Logan. And listen, there might be people listening like, I want to hear Jared have to hear what he doesn't know about himself. You'll be able to hear
obvious,
that, and you'll be able to listen in to Logan. You spoke to my mom.
Oh yeah.
You spent time on the phone with my mom. You talked to Jordana.
Right.
Did you talk to exes of mine?
Yeah, I did.
You talked to exes of mine?
I can't wait.
I'm so excited.
So we're all smiling because I don't know what to expect. But
this is going to be the best $5 you ever spent if you're not a
This is me. I sold my soul to get you to sign up for benefits. Yeah.
There's a reason we're doing this one first, which is I hope you talk to me after we do the next one.
Oh, no. Is it that bad?
It's going to be great.
Real.
So you got to sign up for You Up with Benefits. Wait, we got to give the link. I got to make some money off of this. Subscribe.betches.com. You can sign up, I think, for the whole year in one sign up.
I think there's a year price and then there's a monthly price if you want it. If you don't believe us that this is worth it.
And we've done benefits for years and years, and we have all these very personal episodes. So this was like the place for it. I mean, this isn't like we didn't start this to get money out of you today. Like this is on brand with the You Up with Benefits that we've been doing. So I do want to give a plug to, you will be able to hear what a coaching session with a man is like.
It's true.
Yes.
I mean, part of why I feel this way is I just have so many amazing friends who are, I would say like late 30s who are single. And I feel like they've done so much work. Like they're in therapy, they know themselves, they have great dating app profiles, they go to events. Like I could help them get from like 95% to 100%. But in some ways I feel like it's the pool of daters. And around the country, everyone messages me, hey, do you know any great guys for this great woman that I know? And it's like, That is the running
sentiment
theme.
In New York especially, I think, too.
The idea that they go, where are the men?
Yeah.
It's not even like I'm dealing with these assholes. Where are they? Where do they hang out? And you go, and I even say that, like I'm 39 living in the city. I actually don't know.
And I don't think I'm just saying a cliche to say a cliche. It's like, this is actually what I've been hearing for the past 10 years is like everyone knows a lot of great women and not a lot of great single guys. And I think that this is only going to be perpetuated because at a lot of colleges, 2/3 of graduates there are women.
Okay.
And women tend to only date someone who's the same or more successful than them.
Right.
So if you are one of the 2/3 of women graduating from college and there's only 1/3 of people are men from your college, like there's obviously a mismatch and like you're not going to be able to find someone. And so I kind of feel like I love helping women find people and I think there's things they can do, but I'm also like, what could I do to invest in these guys to make them more eligible?
Right. Do you remember there was this article, I think it came out like 12, 14 years ago at this point, of this woman. She was like a graduate of maybe like Harvard or Yale, and she was giving advice to her daughter. And this just made me think of it. Like
This
basically
was
like
like-
marry your college boyfriend
I
because it's
think
only going to be
is her
slim
name,
pickings from there.
Like Anne Marie.
She got a lot of
I think it's
backlash.
like Anne Marie Slaughter or something.
That sounds familiar.
She's like from Princeton.
Yes, that might have been it.
Yeah. So she was definitely saying like, you'll never be hotter and among more guys than when you're in college.
That
And
are
she-
your
remember
that are
this
at your level.
article,
Yeah, yeah.
There was an element
Yeah.
of truth to it of like you're never going to be like in this pool of men who are at your level or greater,
Right.
and you're the only one. Here's the other part. It's like, and you're the only one around for them.
Right. So I think there's that element, but it's like the people that I'm talking about helping, they're, many years past college.
Right.
I can't fix that,
too late
but
for
it's
them.
like,
Right.
what can I do to
go
help there
back.
be like better people for them to date? At the beginning of this year, my husband joined this men's group. So it's like one of my best friends is a professional magician.
Okay.
And I'm
You have
obsessed with
you
this
have
guy.
I have said this about you, Logan. You have the most like interesting,
Woman of the world.
circle,
Oh, thank you.
story,
Yeah.
like Harvard grad, worked at Hinge, took the you don't usually go
Netflix
Harvard
show.
to Hinge
Oh.
to magician friends,
I know.
TV show.
Yeah, I love this magician, and I actually got engaged at his magic show. So like for my
Nerd alert!
husband-
No.
Wait, it was
Mike
honestly
loves
really cool.
Magic.
I
He
remember,
would
yeah.
be so into this.
Okay, it was really cool. It was like a magic trick that at the end was like, "Will you be my wife?" It was
Oh, that's
really cool.
great.
Okay, anyway, the
Hold
magician.
on. For the people that are listening, I think this is like one of those things. Like I moved to New York City, you think everyone does finance or
Yeah.
or is a lawyer or a doctor, and you come to New York, like there is actually a magician scene.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you go to
Oh,
like
yeah.
LA, what's the LA?
The Magic Castle.
The Magic Castle.
So cool.
People say it's like the best night of their lives. Getting into the Magic Castle is like getting into the Comedy
It is
Cellar.
really cool.
Yeah. So there's like a whole magician thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he started this men's group that my husband is now in. I think it's like 6 or 7 of them, and they meet once a month. And just seeing how important it is to my husband, I'm just like, this needs to exist for more men. Because like, Jordana, if you had a problem, like how many close friends could you text?
Thousands.
Like
I'm very
same.
popular. No, many.
Same.
Like a dozen.
I
Maybe.
text
Yeah.
more people in a day than my husband texts in a year.
Right.
Like if he asked me like, "Oh, what address should we go to?" I have to scroll for so long
Right.
to get to the text from today. Anyway, the point is like I don't think that men have as many people to go to for advice. I don't think that
Right.
they're talking about dating as much. And so I'm just
Also, not as many friends.
that's what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah,
Not as
like-
many friends and not as vulnerable. Like I was
Right.
listening to the Neil Brennan podcast.
Oh, okay, yeah. Neil famously came on my show and hated the music.
He was a hater. Anyway, he has this actually pretty vulnerable podcast called Blocks, where like he and often like a man just talk about like all the things that are messed up about them, what their blocks are. And they were talking about how hard it is to ask for what you want. And this guy was just like, I feel like if I ask for what I want, I'll be rejected or it'll be embarrassing or I would never ask my guy friends. And listening to that, I was like, I just really want to help these people like be a little bit more emotionally mature, both for them and for the women that I want to be able
Right.
to date
I
them.
remember I was at a wedding and our one friend pulled aside one of the wives to take pictures of him in the vineyard
Aw.
for his dating profile.
I've done that for so many men.
We made fun of him forever.
Really?
We
I'm
thought
always
it
the
was-
woman offering. I'm always the woman taking the candid shots.
Jordana's trying to help people.
Yeah.
I know. Listen,
This is why men. This is why the state of men is what they are.
Right, I
because
bring
this
this
is
up.
their biggest
Yeah,
fear,
yeah.
to
right?
make your point. I'm like, what he's doing is correct.
Right.
Like he's like, I'll have a woman take the picture, make
Yeah.
me look
Right.
good, and we know he's right, but we're also gonna make fun of him for it because that's how we do.
Well,
things,
I think
you know,
that's
like-
why men are like hesitant to do things like therapy or coaching. Those are seen as like beta things. I think
Well,
to an extent they're seen as like, okay, like a man. I'm not going to get made fun of by my friends for not going to therapy, for not
Sure.
not getting a dating coach, for not taking this seriously.
I would go. There's another angle to this to me, and it's that a lot of men are fixers, and I think what these coaching therapy presents is like this Pandora's box of like unfixable things that I can't go back and like remedy.
Wait, what is it? What is a fixer?
Like I think just like I want a solution.
They wanna throw
to the
money at
problem.
something.
I
Oh,
want,
okay,
like,
got it.
I want to know, when is it over? When have I won the game? When have I achieved end of therapy? You know, you go
End of coaching.
End of coaching.
When
and
you have a
really
wife.
don't. You know, like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
When you have a wife, that means you're okay. Like you never do. Like it's
Right.
almost
But
like
that's kind of the point, isn't it?
well, it's like.
But then you're like,
or
why even
how
get
about I just
into
want to
it?
relax and not think of these things forever. You know, like
Right.
I just want one day where I'm not like sitting there like wondering if I, you know,
Well, that's how a lot of people think about like dieting, right?
right,
Or like,
right,
or making their bed. Why am I going to make my bed? I have to make it again tomorrow.
Well, I think dieting.
Why not
more-
just not make the bed and then we never have to make it again?
Right. I mean, that's a good point. Like, or
Why do
like,
anything?
I do think this like made fun of by friends. Like, to me, getting made fun of by my friends is how we talk and have fun. Like, I don't really have that. Like, I better not go to therapy because I'll be the loser amongst my group. Like, it's more just like, I think it's more just like a, yeah, I guess I'm fucked up. What now? You know, like, I guess we just
Right.
sit there
Well,
with this, like, I don't know. You don't, this is why you don't see on TikTok this like trauma speak from men. You don't see this like, let's all like, you know, hug each other and tell everyone how horrible our lives were. You know, there's nothing to fix there. You don't have a solution. Where do you make money from that? You know, like I'm just saying, like, and then when you say like women want their level or above, okay, I can't, you know, no one's dating the guy in the sad Storyville. They're dating the guy who's doing well and achieving and finishing levels.
I think there's a few aspects there. So one is the success and education level. That's one thing. That's not necessarily like what I would work with someone on. The other one is probably just emotional maturity.
Sure.
And that is something where I feel like some of these guys could just like use a leg up. It's like, oh, you're avoidant attached. When women get too close to you, you say like, hey, I just called you an Uber. Like we could probably talk through that and then make a plan and then they could do something different. So I actually think if men have a very like fixer mentality,
Sure.
like coaching is a good fit for that because it's like, here's what you're doing. Here's why it's wrong. Here's what to do next time. See you later. Like text me when you're engaged. Like that sort of thing, which does happen. And so I just feel like a lot of times women say this to me, and I'm curious if you hear it, where they're like, that date felt like a therapy session because they feel like this guy has like a bunch of shit he needs to work through. And they're like, I'm not being paid enough to fix this for you. It's like if that guy was in therapy, then maybe the date would have a like more of a lightness to it or something like that.
Right. I you know, to put it on me, I've definitely been on a date where you talk about like the reasons you're not really feeling it or the reasons that you're like having trouble going to the next step. It's usually like a 5th or 6th date where you've been having a fun time and then you're on this like therapy date.
Right.
And I can understand where the woman's like, well, you know, this is above my pay grade, you know, and a little bit of that is giving all the excuses for why they're not getting what they want, which is like the next level, the next date, the next thing in the series of things. So I do understand how that can happen.
See, if I were, I feel like I would enjoy a date that was a therapy session. To me, that's like vulnerability. That's intimacy to an extent. I mean, I think that there's some, you can almost like, I think a lot of women are results oriented and almost you can become like too results oriented. I'm sure you see this where it seems like any date you go on that doesn't end up with a boyfriend or a husband feels like not worth going on.
Yeah. I hear guys say things like dating women at this age feels like they're interviewing me for role of husband. And like it's too intense too soon. And like I also can understand from a guy's perspective how like that's not fun or flirty or sexy. It's too serious.
Totally. Well, this goes into this other fear that you've talked about where it's like, am I something for you to check off your list of like
Right.
women
Am I fixing a problem
in
that is
would you be
a husband?
Do you want to date anyone? Do you want to be in a relationship with
Right.
anyone, or is it about me? And
I think that's what these guys are saying. They're like, you don't actually care about me or what makes me different. You're just like looking to fill the partner in your wedding photos, and like that doesn't feel good for them.
Yeah, I listen. I've felt that before. You can, and I've tried to get deeper with people I've dated and been like, okay, and then had the response back to me be not that deep, and that's when I more feel that I'm just filling a role. You know, because it's like now I'm expected to be, you know, so deep, and you're just because you want a relationship, you are deep.
Yeah.
You know, just because you want the right thing doesn't mean you are ready for that thing.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think that's what if every woman is saying, not every, I know, but I'm just saying, like, if in these situations where they're going, I'm ready for this thing, they can never be looked at as wrong. If they say they want marriage and they're the ones that, got
I think
left,
you can be looking for something mature without being mature.
that's what you're putting the words to what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And that
I've
sort of
been in
describes
that
how
si-
I
and-
was dating in my 20s. I think like, in my mind, like I always wanted a boyfriend, but like, was I actually ready and
Right.
wanting that and asking the right questions and looking for the right people who were going to give that to me? Not necessarily.
Right. Was this the right, right boyfriend for you?
Right.
Yeah. It's all difficult. It's hard. We're going to find out during our coaching session.
I'm really excited.
Stop saying you're excited.
You're scaring him.
Well, we want to go into some of your.
Well, I want to,
Yeah.
before we get anything,
Yeah.
I just want to ask you one more question. So you're saying like the men you're talking about don't know these things that are super obvious a lot of the time, or like maybe obvious to women because they are spending so much time like reading books and going to therapy and doing all these things to like seemingly. Do you think that some women kind of like can overdo it or overanalyze, or like I mean, I see this, I speak with every single woman I've spoken to is like asking people to set her up and going to the singles mixer. They're like doing everything they can. Is there such thing, do you think, as like too much of that?
Yeah. So first of all, this is just stuff that I'm thinking through right now. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
definitely in a what is my 2025 and what am I working on? And so I think the general theme is that when I work with some of the men that I coach, I feel like they're great people and I'm giving them advice and then they incorporate it and it works and they find people quickly. Then I feel like some of the women that I work with, they're already doing like almost all of the right things. Of course, they have some blind spots that we work through. So for example, somebody who steamrolls her dates or somebody who's traveling and doesn't have time to connect with someone. But in a lot of ways, they're really checking all the boxes for what to do. And they're still just not really meeting high quality people. And that makes me feel like one of the things I want to invest in, like let's say in the next 5 years, is what do you do about two populations that maybe like are not clicking or what's going on? And so what would it mean to kind of up level the skills of some of these groups of male daters?
Where would you find them to up their skills? Like I guess
mean,
this
I
is like,
hear from a lot of them.
where do you find them? Like I
Right
think a lot of like
here.
I think
Right.
I think so. When I wrote my book, I said I don't want a pink cover. I don't want stilettos. I don't want an engagement ring. I really wanted to write a book. It has a blue cover that men would read. And I've said this before, and it's kind of cheesy, but it's like I think because I use the field of behavioral science and I say terms like opportunity cost and sunk cost fallacy, I do get a lot of the more data-driven men who are
Right.
like, okay, she went to Harvard, she works on the Hinge research team, like she can be trusted. And so I am getting this population, but it's like, I want to be working with them even more. Or like, maybe I'm not the best person to speak to them, but like, I think having men's groups are ways for men to kind of meet each other and fill in. Like Jordan has 1,000 friends to text. I have 1,000 friends to text. It's like, I kind of just want to create a situation where men can be like figuring out some of the things that I feel like they're struggling with now that
Well,
would make them better
To
partners.
speak to your point, I reached out to you when I was going through my breakup, and like the reason I was drawn to you goes back to solution based.
Right.
It wasn't, there was no you're being a piece of shit.
Yeah.
It was more like A plus B equals C. It was more mathematical.
Yeah.
And that is a draw for me. So I do,
Thank you.
being the regular guy,
Yeah.
in this scenario, I'm like, I can understand why men would be drawn to you. But I do think like I think the where are the men thing is a thing.
Good question.
Like
yeah.
it is
What,
a good.
what do you say when people ask you that?
I don't even know how to answer it because I'm like, where am I? Like I actually like I've thought a lot.
But you are a man that many women want to date.
which is
I mean, we'll get into this.
Yeah, yeah,
sure,
yeah.
but I think
So
I think
here,
of, like,
you're the only one.
Right.
Maybe that's why so many women are dating you, despite you saying that you're
because
that
I'm
you're-
out there.
You're
I'm the
not
only one
looking for a
I'm
relationship.
one of the few straight men talking about dating publicly.
But not
Right.
like, but also I feel like you're very in demand because there's not that many great
Right.
guys.
But that's my point. Like I think there are great.
like we
the only
think you're
reason
getting more attention than you should
Right.
get.
I do too. I think there's more great guys. I
Yeah.
maybe I am too much of an optimist.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not looking. I'm not. I could be accused of like you're not hearing how horrible these guys are. I don't think I'm that great. So I think that there's a lot of okay guys like me out there.
Right.
And I seem to be getting dates. And I'm like, where am I on a Saturday night? Well, I'm doing shows, or I'm like at a restaurant with like maybe myself or like a friend and their wife. That would be like the options. I'm like trying to think, like New Year's Eve, I'm gonna be in Miami sitting at a bar alone. Like that's my plan.
But I think I don't know if most men are doing that, are they?
This is my point.
Right,
I'm like, because I'm trying to backtrack through me.
So you mean literally where are they geographically?
Right.
I kind of thought you meant metaphorically, like where are they? Are there any of them out here?
Well, I think
I'm not so great. I'm not so bad. So this is my point. I am just I'm an okay guy. I'm not. This isn't false.
Yeah.
Modesty. I'm saying I'm fine. There has to be more of me.
How do we make more me?
Well, I'm just going,
Right.
where are they? And I'm like, I don't even, you're talking about your husband in a men's group. I don't even know who I would talk to for a fucking men's group. And if I got a DM from a guy being like, hey, I'll be in your men's group, I would be like, delete.
That's kind
Don't
of
want
like,
to talk to you.
that's sort of like part
I
of
wanna be
all
alone.
of it. Yeah.
Well, I guess like to that point of like where are they metaphorically? Like you're saying, so 2/3 of college graduates are women, right? And then, so of that there's already a numbers difference, right? But then also you throw in like the biological clock difference, right? And it's just like the like to me, there's no lazy, there's just unmotivated, right? So there already is a disparity, and then the 1/3 of men also feel like they can get married whenever they feel like it. So it's like you're kind of like bringing down the population further.
The numbers stink.
Did either of you study abroad?
We both did.
Okay, where did you study?
We both studied in Florence separately.
Okay,
Yeah.
I studied abroad in Italy.
Okay.
My program was like 90% women, 10% guys.
Right.
If I think back to those guys, like they weren't cute, they weren't cool. They
Excuse
were
me.
crushing. Maybe in Florence it was different.
No,
they were
I agree.
crushing-
No, same. We had
They were
very small-
crushing
Crushed it
it
there,
on
I'm
my
sure. Very few men.
program.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, because if you are in the small group of dateable guys, then you feel like you have infinite choice and maybe you're not going to commit to anyone.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's another thing. It's like, where are the great guys? Where are the Jareds? It's like they might already be in relationships, or maybe they're not settling down because they're getting so much attention for just being fine that
Well,
why would they commit?
I would say
Right.
that makes it, I mean, hard on me is distraction. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of like my problem is like, oh, like it is exciting to meet someone new. It is exciting to go on.
Well,
a
there's no
first
scarcity
date.
mindset for you.
Right.
There's no, well, if it doesn't work
Right.
out with this woman, what if someone else never comes along? I don't think there's any fear
Right,
in
you
your
don't
mind
have
of
the
that.
biological clock ticking saying like, okay, I have a fertility timeline.
I just remember when I broke up with a girlfriend, she's like, she even said, do you want to be an old dad?
Yeah.
And I was like, that isn't even like a thought in my
Mhm.
brain. Like that like, I would much rather be an
Because
old,
you have the option to be an old dad.
right. I don't
Like,
want to be a
that's-
poor dad.
We're gonna-
Well, you
Poor
also,
dad is much worse.
but you also have unlimited time theoretically to make that money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But if I'm not, again, like the only thing that can ruin my life is a woman.
So
We'll get to that on the
my
benefits
husband,
episode.
who Jared's met, but you haven't met yet, he's a scientist, he's very practical, and he is very blunt. So one time we were talking and he was like, yes, like men are very motivated by novelty. So he's like, there's this study where you have a male rat in a cage and you keep putting in new female
I like to be
rats
called a mouse.
for him to have sex with. And he's like, the rat will literally keep having sex with these female rats until it dies of exhaustion. Because but if you
That's
just
the state of dating.
if you just have it with the same female rat, he'll eventually get sick of her. So there's just this
Right.
feeling of like, if you have a novel person to have sex with, you will keep choosing the novelty. And so Jared might be this rat that
Well,
just
Yeah.
has a lot of options. And why would you pick one of
Let
them?
me just.
Well, I
also
guess then
say
how
I'm
do-
not
then how
having
do
a
you
lot of
solve
sex.
that issue?
The sex thing is overblown in my mind. But it is.
But it's the option that you could.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
more
yeah.
than the
right,
actual sex. The
dream.
idea that you
Right,
could.
right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Well-
and also you can go home and masturbate and not have to kick anyone out of your apartment. Like you
Right.
can just like.
Well, porn is another thing. Yeah.
Right.
Porn
But
doesn't
I
help
mean,
anything. But yeah.
but to that point, then, like, what do you do about that sort of like, again, that's not like anyone's fault. That seems like a just like demographic issue.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in my first episode, the secretary problem, and I know you said you've like brought it up in other shows, but when I talk to people, men and women, who say, you know, there's always going to be the next person out there, these maximizers who are thinking, I can just keep searching. I really try to have a mindset conversation with them about the fact that every year that you keep waiting for the perfect person is a year that you're not building your life with someone or becoming a parent. And that, you know, somebody said this to me around like, he's so happy that he got married young because he has like a lifetime of stories with his wife. And so I think for someone who has
I don't like this.
He's already married.
The guy was already married.
I think, by his wife.
I think the point is to say to people, it's not about finding the perfect person. It's about finding a great person and investing in them and building a great relationship. And like, I like to talk about a lot of the flaws in my relationship just to say, like, I picked someone and I made it work. It doesn't mean that it's perfect all the time or my husband's like exactly who I'd want him to be all the time. But like, we've built something together over 10 years that I'm really proud of.
Right. I love that because I get that question a lot from a lot of women. How did you know Mike was the one? How did you know that it was like, this was the person? And I'm like, I don't know that like the one is a concept that I believe in, but I knew this was a person who had like shared values that like I got along really well with, that had the same vision for the future. And like, that doesn't, people don't want to hear that.
Well,
men don't want to hear that either.
I also, let me give credibility to that. Because I do look at that and that is very enviable.
Yeah.
And it's attractive to me. Like this partnership that knows each other like family, that likes each other, that has this, you know, has arguments but comes back together at the end of the, you know, the sitcom where the music gets, you know, hippy dippy. Like I do think that is not settling, that is creating. That is
I like that.
a good thing. I think it gets this bad thing, especially, and
well, some men might take it as, well, you would take anyone then. But it's like, that's not what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying. I think, especially, and I think it takes, I don't think men know they're doing it as they're doing it. I think they're like, kind of like falling into this, like, kind of luckily. I don't think they're as, like, thoughtful with it, which is why they seem more romantic with it. Like that's why they, you know, the idea of like, oh, you'll just take anyone, like, or like it's just not that. Because when I see my friend, again, when I went on vacation, went on a weekend with my friends, we all went together. They're married with kids. The way they talked about it was like very, it wasn't like junk food. It was satiating.
Yeah.
Their relationships, the sound of their relationships. So I don't know. I just don't like this idea of like, I don't think that's settling at all.
Like one story that comes to mind for me is I'm definitely a words of affirmation person and my husband is not. So I'm constantly like, please affirm me, please affirm me. And so he doesn't. So for Mother's Day, it was my first Mother's Day this year, he was like, what do you want? And I was like, I want you to give me words of affirmation every day. And so he did it for the first 2 days and then he never did it again. And at first I was like, this is so sad. Like I obviously asked for this because I really need it. And then I was just like, no, like this is my husband. Like he shows love in other ways.
Right.
And like for this trip, I left, my flight was at 7 a.m. I left my house at 5:30 a.m. yesterday. Like when I went to open the door to leave, there was a piece of tape on the doorknob that says your noodles are in the fridge.
Aw.
Like reminding me.
Clean up your shit.
No, yeah, reminding me to get like
nice.
my plain food that he had bought for me at like a
Yeah.
nice grocery store. And I was like, this is how my husband is showing me love. He like wants me to eat healthy food on a plane and like he doesn't want me to forget. And like I just felt like that piece of tape was really meaningful to me because that's how he cares for me. And it's not words of affirmation. And like I can go on Instagram for that. But I just feel like I would want to share that story with someone to be like, no, you shouldn't break up with someone because they don't necessarily show love in exactly the way that you would want. It's like every relationship is a set of problems. Choose the set of problems that you can deal with. And I think when you've been dating for so long, someone's like, no, I'm going to wait till there are no problems.
Right.
And that doesn't
I don't want to change.
exist.
I don't want to, because I think once you become accustomed in your single ways past a certain point, you're like, well, I'm so comfortable.
Of
Someone who has to
course.
be like the most incredible person
Yeah.
that's ever existed for me to give up doing whatever I want the way I want to do it as I've been doing it.
Also, it's choose the set of problems you want to deal with where like, well, you don't even know what problems, maybe these problems aren't the ones, you know,
You don't even know.
you don't even know. How would I handle those problems? Maybe I should go check out how those problems work, but
Like you've never met a set of problems that you.
I guess like it's
Well, here's the other. I think men have this more than other people. Is I think men are like, and in some ways that makes them more romantic than a lot of women. Is like, I want to meet someone and I want to love them just like they are, and I'm not going to try to change anything about them. When I meet that person, I'm going to marry them. And a woman, I think, because she has more of a biological situation, she can meet someone and say, okay, this is a strong candidate, great, like great on paper, nice, has a few things that I could work on, and like and I say that all the time.
Right.
I can fix that. Like,
Right.
oh,
I
he
think that's
uses,
a really smart
he
point.
uses a fork for sushi. Like, I could fix that.
Do you relate to that? Do you relate to
absolutely.
I think that's really smart.
Well, absolutely. You know why? It kind of goes back to, and this is like more simple. Guys don't go on dates with women they're not attracted to. You go on a date with someone because you are attracted. The penis does not let you leave the house unless he is happy. And it's just the truth. And when we hear from women all the time, I'm not saying this out of turn. Like, we have women, I went on 3 dates. I'm not sure if I'm attracted yet. And it's like, that happens a lot. And I think when you're already starting at, I could go out with someone that I'm not really attracted to yet, and I could get into it.
Yeah.
You're already on that level
But
of
attraction-
like, I'm working.
Attraction is only one thing. I agree with you that for a lot of men, attraction is table stakes. It's like, only want to go out with her if I'm attracted.
Right. And attracted could be, this gets into comparison. There's no, again, like as we've said here, butt for every seat. There's someone who's attracted to everyone has someone attracted to them. So like that, again, table stakes. But I think when you're already in that mode of like, I'll make concessions.
Yeah.
A guy's coming on a date with no concessions.
Well, I want to show you this clip from Later Daters.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
That got
Everyone go
is
watch the
100
show. Logan's fantastic.
It has 162,000 likes on TikTok.
Oh my
I
God.
sent this
I'm really
because
excited.
I just thought it was so funny.
Big deal, if you want me to be real honest with you, is Metro Atlanta traffic.
Well, you haven't been married in 12 years. You're looking for somebody to spend the rest of your life with. Are you really going to let metro traffic get in the way of
I will.
Okay, I didn't know what clip you were going to play,
Yeah.
but I'm really glad it was that one because it went viral in Atlanta where people are like, I'm with Greg on that one. Like,
Right.
Metro Atlantic traffic is so bad. Like, just the way he says, I will.
ITP, OTP
Such
is a
the
big
timing,
Atlanta
the comedic
thing.
timing
Yeah.
of both of your ends is just like very, very, very funny.
But and
Also-
I like that clip because I like what I said, where I'm like, you have been single for 12 years. You want to get married. Are you really going to let this get in the way? And he says, I will. Like, that
Right.
stubbornness is just like what we're talking about.
Right.
Well, it's a question of motivation. To me, that's a question of motivation. It's like clearly you don't want to be in a relationship that badly. And I think we kind of talk about this where single people get annoyed that like relationship people get frustrated with them. But I'm like, if you really want to be in a relationship, wouldn't you figure it out over that?
But maybe going back to what you said, maybe it is this romantic thing where he's like, no, the perfect woman exists right in my neighborhood.
Right.
Whereas maybe a woman would be like, I can fix that. Or like, that's a solvable problem.
Right.
Right. And again, I have the thought that I wanted to live in this area
Yeah.
for personal reasons.
Yeah.
So I would assume that the person who lives in a similar area to me had those same personal reasons that we would connect on that. I can make it positive, this guy's traffic thing. Like I have this, talk shit about Hoboken. I go, I don't know if I would ever go to Hoboken. I would rather live in a smaller place with less comfort to live in Manhattan than to have a car living in Hoboken. We are this isn't better
Are
or
you two
worse.
different people?
No, but I think two different sensibilities. Again, like I think as you're getting older, you are making bets. Like you're like, okay, percentages wise, I'm like, I got to assume we might not get along that well because we have these different sensibilities.
But you could also live in your building and be a raging bitch, like the ones, like the
Absolutely.
person you described a couple weeks ago.
Right, no, that-
like, is
again, both
that
can
a
be
similar
true.
sensibility? I don't know.
No, maybe I'm the bitch. Like maybe.
Maybe.
I'm the asshole. But I've met, I went out with a girl from Jersey City. She was great. Awesome. Got along really well.
Well, a man of the world.
I'll go outside of my...
Look, you're 15 years away from being on the Later Daters.
I'm getting closer and closer every
Later
day.
Daters season 16.
I will not leave the island. That's me. Yeah.
So you're not quite there, but I feel like that is something big that I saw on the show. So there's one cast member named Nate, and his house is just set up in this very particular way. So his shorts are all folded on hangers and everything is put away perfectly. And he goes on a date with this woman who I think he's a great match for. She's really fun. They have great banter. And she's like, what if I left my dress out? And he's like, you wouldn't. We couldn't leave the house if it wasn't away. And so there was just this feeling of like his life was just set up in this very organized way and he couldn't imagine a world in which it wasn't. And it truly got in the way of him connecting. And so I think that at 25, people are just a little bit more flexible. They might have roommates. They don't have the bathroom they want. And then as you get older and you set up your home and your lifestyle in the way you want, you're just like, I would need someone to fit perfectly into this life.
I just did a video about this on TikTok, like, because I don't like when people say like there's no one out there. Like it does kind of like make me think like, who the fuck are you to say there's no one out there?
Yeah.
But I do think part of it is, you're comfortable. You're more in your 20s. You're not comfortable. In your 20s, everyone wants to leave the house because I want to get away from these fucking roommates.
Yeah.
And your 30s, you go, well, I have like this place that I've like built to like hug me.
Yeah, your life is just more set up, so there's more ways that somebody would have to fit into it or that you would have to compromise versus when you're creating a life.
Well, also when you get married younger, you are kind of becoming this symbiotic relationship.
Definitely.
And when you get married older, you're like, it is more merger than it is acquisition.
When I think about who I was when I met my husband, like I feel like I was a different person and we've kind of merged together. And there's ways that I see myself as very much a product of him and vice versa. And so it's like, if we met now, maybe we wouldn't get married. I don't even know what we would be like right now. And so, yes, there is something easier about being younger because you're less formed. But when you're older, there's also advantages because you know yourself better. Like there's a part on the show where somebody is just really clear, like, oh, he has young kids at home. Like, I've already raised my kids. I don't want that. And so I think there's advantages to knowing yourself better, but in some ways it just makes it harder. You're more stubborn. You're more set in your ways.
Right. Well, I think people see that as settle. Like, there's like a difference to me between like settling and compromise.
I totally
And I think
agree.
it's a very fine line. Most people don't know like where it is or I don't know if there is a definitive answer about where it is. What are your thoughts?
I think
on that.
Okay, I like to often think about a job comparison because I think it's less intense and dramatic for people to think about a job. So for example, when people say to me, I'm doing everything I can to meet someone, and then they tell me what they're doing, I'm like, you're being very reactive. You respond to the guys who message you, but you're not sending any comments yourself. So I'm like, that would be like saying, where's my dream job? I'm waiting for a LinkedIn recruiter to message me about it, right? You have to be more proactive. Similarly, imagine if somebody gave you your dream job, but it paid a little less than you expected, or you had to commute an hour a day. Like, wouldn't you do it? Wouldn't you be able to look at it and be like, this is what I wanted. It's not exactly what I wanted, but I'm going to make it work because it's my dream. I wish people thought about that more in dating, where it's like, yes, this person lives inside Atlanta and I live on the outside, but like they have so many good things about them and I've been single for 12 years, I'm going to make it work. But somehow we treat relationships as something completely differently than anything else. It's like, you'll compromise on your apartment, you'll compromise on a trip, you'll compromise on your job. But like when it comes to relationships, we want it to be this perfect fantasy, and I don't think anything is.
I think also, in addition to like, again, I'm not trying to play, be annoying with devil's advocate type stuff, but I'm saying my fears.
Yeah.
Talk about someone living in Hoboken versus Manhattan. It's a hypothetical person. You can say no to that because it isn't a person.
Yeah.
You meet at a bar and you meet someone, you hit it off, and then they go, I live in Hoboken. I'm gonna go out with that person.
100%.
These are two different things. The hypothetical person versus the person you met in person or at a party. This is why go out with friends, meet fix-ups are so much better than the dating apps, because the dating app is just a menu of things you can say no to.
Yes, the field that I pull from the field of behavioral science, it's so much about what you're talking about. So there's this idea of stated versus revealed preferences. So your stated preference would be, I can't be with anyone who lives in Hoboken.
Right.
But if you met someone great and at the end of the conversation you found out she lives in Hoboken, your revealed preference would be, it doesn't matter that much. And so so many of the conversations that I have with people in a coaching capacity are about, you think you know what you want. You're being really strict about your stated preferences. But just as you said, if you met this person, you would be okay with them. So how can you just expand your filters in the first place?
Right.
Well, that's the thing. And I think you get more into your stated preferences.
Yeah.
And I love the way you put it. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Is if you go beyond your stated preferences, you get, I have been blamed for, well, you went all the way to Hoboken when you said you never would. Mm-hmm. Now you must have thought this was more serious than it was. You have led me on to believe.
I mean, that's an issue with the person saying that.
Well,
I think,
but this is what gets kind of,
Right.
this is why I back away from hypothetical Hoboken.
But so much of that is a story in your head. And
HH
we are going to talk about this in the
Jared
benefits
episode. Sorry, yeah.
HHG.
We can get to our
Hoboken girl.
Yeah.
All right, let's do the email.
Let's do the email.
Because I also think this
we
is
have
like
we're gonna have so much more to unpack on
we have
this.
we have a lot to unpack apparently.
Yeah.
But I do think
We've locked the door. It's going to be an intervention.
apparently my mom's here. This is coming out on January 3rd, so this is meant to be a little bit more of a pump up someone for the year episode. You have something called you had a newsletter. It was your most successful newsletter. Okay, do you worry that you're undateable? Okay, and explored the shame many people feel around something in their lives that makes them feel unworthy of love. So this was a very popular.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of response to that. So we have an email kind of on that subject.
Oh, great. Okay, I love this topic.
All right,
Yes.
ready? Do
You want to read it?
Okay.
You can read it.
J&J, I wanted to come to you guys with a few questions about where I'm at with dating and relationships, hoping at least a few of your listeners can relate. I've been single for the last 5 years, and I know that Jordana said she was in a similar situation before meeting Mike. I've always wanted a serious relationship, but it hasn't happened yet. No matter how much my therapist and friends tell me otherwise, I can't help but feel that I am, quote unquote, undateable or just no longer, quote unquote, relationship material since I've been single for so long. I've accomplished a lot in my life outside of finding a serious relationship, a more lucrative career, traveling, strengthening new and old friendships, etc. But I can't help but feel that now I'm some defective model of a person who is too far gone to be in a relationship again. My questions for you are, okay, have either one of you had this feeling before? 2, how do you overcome it if you've ever felt this way? 3, say you met a potential romantic partner and found out that they've been single but have been dating with a few 3-month situationships here and there for 5 years. Is this a red flag or deal breaker? Starting to feel despy over here, the 5-year bachelorette.
Oh.
So this is a fantastic email,
Yes.
well written, thought out, all the things. See, aware.
It seems like you've gotten a
Yeah.
lot of feedback in this response to people who feel similarly.
How do you feel about this email?
Yeah,
Or what do you say
so
to this person?
this was something that was coming up with coaching clients, and then I put this out in an email, do you feel undateable? And as you said, it was the email that I got the most response to ever in 4 years. And that's because I think so many people are walking around with this feeling of there's something about me that makes me unworthy of love. And either they go on dates and they're just holding their breath, waiting for the moment when they're going to have to reveal it, or they're not going on dates at all. And when I asked people this question, what makes you feel undateable, the range of responses I got was so interesting. So some people talked about physical illness, like they had had cancer in their 20s or they had chronic pain. Some people talked about having an STI. Some people talked about being estranged from their family. Some people talked about having never been in a relationship or having been in too many relationships. It's so interesting that so many of us are walking around with this feeling. And so the first thing I would say to this listener who wrote in is this is completely normal. A lot of people feel this way. The next thing I would say is that the work that I have done with people that's helped make them more successful around this is taking that vulnerability and really turning it into a strength. And so the way to do that is to understand that when you're vulnerable on a date, it makes people feel much more connected to you. And so, for example, I have this friend who is a recovering alcoholic, and he used to not want to go on dates for that inevitable moment when they'll say, what are you drinking tonight? And he had to explain why he was having, a sparkling water. But then he learned to tell his story from a place of strength. So what that means is that he would say, hey, for a while, my drinking got out of control. I did something about it. I haven't had a drink in 7 years, and I've actually, learn to love Spindrift or whatever it was. So he shared from a place of strength and he said, this is what happened. Here's how I dealt with it. Here's where I am now. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask for permission. He just shared confidently. And eventually he met this woman who felt so drawn to him when he shared that because she said, I grew up in an abusive family and that's what I feel makes me undateable. But because he shared his baggage and he had baggage and she had baggage and their baggage matched, they felt so much more comfortable. And I think that's the thing that we don't understand. We think if I have a glossy exterior, if I seem perfect, somebody will want me. Somebody wants me to be perfect. But you can't grab on to a glossy exterior. You need to have cracks in it. And so those cracks are what makes people feel connected to you. And I know it's become a cliche at this point with Brene Brown, but it's really true. It's like when two people are vulnerable on a date, that's where real connection comes from. And so for this person, I would say, let's come up with a way to tell your story. So maybe it's something like, I've been in a few serious relationships in my life. For the last 5 years, I've been focusing on other things. You know, I'm really proud of what I've accomplished in my job, or, you know, I ran this marathon. I'm really invested in other relationships in my life. I love being an aunt. I'm really close to my mom, whatever it is. And now I'm really looking to find someone. And so you're explaining what's gone on, but you're not saying like, I'm broken. Will you accept me? You're sort of saying like, yeah, I did do other things for the 5 years and it didn't work out with anyone. And so I think the key ideas here are to understand that vulnerability creates connection, that we know from research at Hinge that 93% of people are really looking for somebody to be emotionally vulnerable on that first date, and that this does not make you ineligible for dating at all. And that if you really learn how to share your story from a place of strength and growth, then nobody is going to reject you for it.
Right. I think and I think a big part of that, especially for someone who thinks they're undateable because they haven't had a relationship, which is an insecurity I remember having also at the time, because you're kind of like, well, if no one else wants to date me, how is this person going to, if I share that no one else wants to date me,
That's so true.
will this person want to date me when they're like, I'm like the, like we're discarded. Obviously it's like a horror, like in your worst thoughts about yourself. It's like, if no one else is choosing me, like, how do I present that and then expect you to choose me?
Yeah, that's so true.
But I think the way you've said it is really important, and it's sort of like believing that yourself, that it's like that you haven't met the right person, or maybe you haven't been seeking out the right kinds of people, and that's why it hasn't
don't reject
happened.
yourself before somebody else can reject you. Like I think a lot of this is that we feel like we're unlovable, so no one else would love us because we don't love ourselves.
Right.
And just don't assume that what's going on with you is a reason why someone shouldn't be with you.
Yeah, I've never been turned off by someone's story. I've been turned off by how they told the story.
Right.
So like, it just personally, everything you're saying, you know, totally here. But is this the feedback? How are men saying to you that they feel undateable? Because this, to me, haven't been in a relationship ever, feels very, to me, gendered.
Yeah.
Well, because I think a lot of women look at men who have never been in relationships and go, whoa, deal breaker, can't do that, you know, and then that's kind of like why she's feeling it, because it's been said, you know, the finger's been pointed, so now she's got fingers pointing back at herself.
I think most women assume that men who aren't in relationships don't want to be. And I don't think that people assume that about women who aren't in relationships. And I'll speak for myself. Like I assume a man like you, and I think this is accurate, you're not in a relationship because you don't want to, because if you wanted to me, it'd be like, you could have it. So I don't feel, there's not this sense of like pity that arises, I think, around a single man that there is around a single woman, where a lot of people assume that they want to be in a relationship.
Again, I would tell the story very differently. I'd be like, I haven't found the right match for me.
But you believe that.
I do believe
I think it's also like, kind of like you said, you'd have to believe it. Like with the alcohol story, with the, you know, having a substance abuse issue, like you have to like have gotten to the point where you are sober and like that has to be true. Right. So for this woman, I think even like, but do you think that she should keep dating while telling herself this story? Or do you think she needs to like figure out a way to actually believe the package that she's putting, that she's creating, which is, I haven't met the right person, maybe because I haven't been dating the right people, or whatever the reason actually is. Like, does she have to figure that out before she dates?
I always feel like people can figure that stuff out while dating. I think a lot of times we have this notion in our head that one day we'll wake up and be perfectly ready to date. So it's like, I need to read these 5 books and go to this amount of therapy and then I can start dating. So for her, I would just say, keep dating, but figure out how to tell your story, both in a way that feels true to you and feels empowering. So I liked what you said, which is, I've been dating people for a while. I feel like I've really know what I want and the life I want to build, and I'm excited to meet that person. And so instead of having this identity around I'm unlovable or I will be rejected or I've been wasting the last 5 years, can she actually celebrate what she's learned? And she could do that by making a list of 5 years ago, these are the things I was doing that I wouldn't do again. These are the characteristics I've learned matter to me. Here's the self-awareness that I've gained. And so I think the more that we can celebrate what we've learned makes us feel less like success is only I have a boyfriend or I don't. And instead it's a spectrum of look how much I've learned and I'm getting closer to my goal.
Right.
Love it.
Love it. This is great.
This is great. Everyone go follow Logan at Logan Ury and go watch The Later Daters. It is out on Netflix right now. We want you to go watch, enjoy, so relatable, all this stuff. I have to end this episode because I got to get to my coaching session.
It's true.
I'm so excited.
Commute is long.
Yeah, we want you guys to go follow Logan and go watch the show, but also sign up for benefits so you can hear.
I'm excited.
Logan called my mom.
It's true. Kim Fried was on the phone.
So go check it out. Logan, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This was so fun.
Thank you so much.
We'll be back next week with benefits as well as our Wednesday episode.
Bye.
Boom.
You Up is produced by Candice Maniga and Shannon Sassone. Edited by Emily Freed. Social media by Candice Maniga. Booking by Adley Freelander. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our show. Send your emails to youup@betches.com. And check out you.up.podcast on Instagram.